Next is lunch with the Lancet. I'll bet they didn't have cooked vegetables and vegetable soup. The Art of Medicine, some weighty thoughts on dieting and epidemics. Well, I didn't get a chance to read this article, but it shows this woman with her, Kellogg's cornflakes. And it shows a cute little bowl, and it's an old-fashioned picture, and the little box of Kellogg's cornflakes there. Cereals are great for breakfast, but it would be much better if it was unprocessed cereals. Cereals like brown rice or barley or millet or quinoa, those are literally called cereals. And those are grains, and those are what the healthiest cultures in the world used to eat, but we tend not to do that anymore. More whole foods is the healthy way to go. Not the fish, the chicken, the meat, the cheese, the eggs. And I know everybody's sitting there saying, but that tastes good. Yes, it does taste good, but are you willing to have open heart surgery for it or develop cancer of the colon? So if you don't want those things, there is a price to pay, and that price is what I call mature restraint. So by mature restraint and doing things like processed cereals less as opposed to more of the unprocessed cereals, foods like they grow in the field, the quinoa, the barley, the millet, the brown rice. I'm not very happy with wheat, which would mean Wheaties. I'm not very happy with rye or rye flakes or rye bread. I think that those tend to be highly allergenic to the body, but that is my best guess, so as you will. But if you're going to eat it, eat the foods like they grow in the field. Nobody did anything except come along, pick them up, and bring them to you to cook. Now, you're going to say, well, I don't know how to cook brown rice. You just boil it, and the question is, how are you going to boil it? Are you going to boil it till it's soft? And that is the proper thing to do. You throw in generally what I call 2 to 1. If you're going to put in this much grain, you put in twice as much water. First of all, you bring the water to the boil. And then after the water is boiled, then you put in the correct amount of grain, and you heat the water back up, and then you cook it for, if you've soaked it overnight, if you soak the brown rice overnight, it cooks in 30 minutes of boiling time. If you didn't, it'll cook in 60 minutes. You may say, who's got the time for that? Think about a crock pot. You know it is get smart or get hurt. You don't answer to me. You answer to you. If you want to argue with you, that's your business. But what I am telling you is that my role here is to be a voice from your biology to your brain to allow you to protect yourself maximally so that you have as enjoyable a life, as few healthcare costs and disease processes as possible. And it isn't like I was so perfect all along. I made my mistakes and have had to pay in some ways too. So I'm encouraging you to get smart, prevent disease, don't have animal protein, any kind of animal protein, fish, chicken, meat, cheese, eggs, yogurt, cottage cheese, ice cream, more than twice a week. Not each one of those, all of those put together. And you may know that I tend to think, I don't know what I did with that article. It's an article here about cancer of the ovaries linked in some people to the intake of lactose. And I had that right here, and it slipped away from me somewhere. But dairy fat is the best way to make hardening of the arteries. So that's one reason why I'm against dairy fat. You might immediately respond, well, what about low fat? What about low-fat yogurt? I don't think there's much good about milk. Therefore, I don't recommend skim milk, 1%, 2%, light and lively, cottage cheese, yogurt, or ice cream. Do I avoid that 100%? I 99.9% avoid dairy products. Once in a while, I'll have a bite or two of a piece or two of pizza. And for the first time in probably 2 years, I had a small amount of ice cream, and frankly, it didn't taste very good to me, but I'm sure there are great ice creams out there that would taste good to me. But I've now become milk intolerant so that I become lactose deficient, and I'm not interested in taking the lactate pills so that I can then eat the dairy products. I think it's a message, don't eat it. If you have sensitivity to milk, you don't need a pill that makes you tolerant of it. You need to not eat it. And I don't think anybody should eat it because I don't think it's good for you. Are there rare circumstances where I think it is indicated? Yes. I certainly don't think it's indicated for the prevention of osteoporosis, however, because the calcium is not well absorbed. Calcium is much better absorbed from collard greens, and also the calcium and vitamin D supplemented orange juice or grapefruit juice or rice milk, and so on. Now, continuing through this journal, Stephen B. Colvin, leading cardiovascular surgeon who pioneered mitral valve repair. What are they saying? He died at the age of 67 from multiple myeloma. There are a number of conditions which seem to come up and go down in popularity. I never heard about many of my patients having myeloma until about the past 5 years. It seems to me that the incidence of myeloma is increasing. And I don't think it's just better diagnosis. I think that the frequency is increasing. As for some reason, the frequency of urinary tract infections is also increasing, and the diagnosis of the frequency of pericarditis. So those are conditions that I see that are increasing in frequency. There's always been a ton of high blood pressure. Whether or not there's any more of that, I don't know. There's always been a ton of high cholesterol and a ton of diabetes. We do know that diabetes and high blood pressure and high cholesterol and high triglycerides are going up a little bit as the population gets heavier. But what's causing these urinary tract infections, inflammation of the covering around the heart called pericardium, and myeloma, I don't have an idea at the present time. Now here's an ad for Lipitor. Lipitor is a really good cholesterol-lowering medication, and it does not have nearly the side effects nor interactions, and it does better with some of the chemicals within the body, generating them to better than Zocor or Simvastatin, which all of the insurance companies are pushing people towards. I think that's a little bit unfortunate, but that's the way it works. It is money. And what they're going to find out is they're going to save money now, but in the end, they would have been better off to have prescribed the Lipitor or the Crestor. Now, I haven't been a big fan of Crestor. I've used it in my toughest patients because it is the most effective. And by the way, Sidney Wolfe came out and said, oh, this is a terrible drug. He was ranting and raving inappropriately about how bad Crestor was when it first came on the market. He really was just being a loudmouth. Now, I have a lot of respect for Sidney Wolfe, but he went off the deep end, thought he had the information, and has since not retracted his statement. If he were a gentleman, I would say he would retract his statement. If he wants to bring it up for a discussion again, that's all right with me too. But there was a recent study called the Meteor trial, which showed that Crestor actually reversed hardening of the arteries. And I think that is a very important. One does not go on to have a heart attack or a stroke when you start reversing the hardening of the arteries process. Will it happen? Rarely, yes. But in the general population, getting that cholesterol down to the very low levels, which I have informed you about many times, prevents hardening of the arteries.